They say you don't notice the moment your life changes. That it sneaks up on you like a spider on your shoulder, quiet, patient, impossible to forget once it sinks its little fangs in. But I can't tell you the exact second mine did. It was a Wednesday. Nothing significant. Not a holiday. Not an anniversary. Not the kind of day people write songs about. Just a Wednesday. But that's how betrayal works, I guess. It doesn't care about poetic timing. I was in the garage, of all places, sitting in a folding chair next to the washing machine, flipping through an old issue of Popular Mechanics like it was still 2003. I wasn't reading it. I just liked the smell of pages that hadn't been turned in years. Comforting in a strange way, like a childhood blanket that's now too small to cover anything but your regrets. That's when Madison called out from the kitchen. "Roger, do we still have that folding table?" I yelled back. "Which one?" "The one we used at your cousin's potluck. The ugly plastic one that smells like a bowling alley." I scratched my chin. That narrows it down to every folding table we've ever owned. She didn't laugh. Of course not. Madison hadn't laughed at one of my jokes in months. I thought it was just marriage. You know, the natural expiration date on shared amusement. Turns out, there was a different reason, but we'll get there. I dragged the table up from behind a wall of paint cans and dust-caked extension cords. Madison was wearing a pair of jeans I hadn't seen since Obama's first term and a t-shirt with a sarcastic quote that used to make me smile. Now it just felt like it was mocking me. "Thanks," she said, without looking at me. That was Madison lately, efficient. Like a barista who used to remember your name but now just slaps the cup down and mumbles, "Next." But none of that mattered at the time. What mattered was the envelope she dropped on the table 10 minutes later. "Don't open it," she said, walking into the living room. "It's for Karen." Now, Karen, if you're wondering, is not our daughter. We don't have kids. Not even a plant. Karen is Madison's best friend from her college years, which is to say, the person she still texts gifs of crying actresses to when she's annoyed with me for buying the wrong brand of toilet paper. So of course I opened it. I know. Boundaries, trust, integrity, yada yada. But come on. You don't wave a "don't open this" flag in front of a man whose entire world has felt like it's been running on dial-up for 6 months. I slid out a single Polaroid photo. Just one. I didn't even know they still made those. And there they were. Madison. And not Karen. And not just standing in a group at some charity gala or brunch. No, they were in a garage, my garage, in fact. Same peeling paint, same crooked calendar with half the months missing. Except the moment wasn't captured with folding tables or old magazines. It was Madison, standing between two boxes, wearing one of my old flannel shirts, and kissing someone who was definitely not a Karen, unless Karen had grown 5 o'clock shadow and a taste for elbow tattoos. Now, you might be thinking this is where I flipped the table, marched into the living room, and demanded answers. But that's not what happened. I did what any emotionally overwhelmed, Midwestern-born man in his 40s would do. I sat down and made a spreadsheet. Yep, an actual spreadsheet. I titled it, Madison's Creative Uses of Time. Column A, Date. Column B, Madison's Stated Activity. Column C, New Evidence of Alternative Reality. It wasn't about catching her. I had already caught her. This was about processing, about keeping my mind busy so I didn't walk out the door and keep walking until I hit Arizona. The funniest part, if you can call anything in this story funny, is that the guy wasn't even someone exciting. Not a personal trainer. Not a younger guy from her yoga class. No, it was Derek. Our mailman. Let that sink in. Derek, the guy who once dropped a whole stack of AARP magazines on our porch and shouted, "Looks like your future just arrived." Derek, who still wore his uniform even on his days off because polyester breathes better than cotton. I guess it wasn't about excitement for her. It was about, I don't know, control? Simplicity? Maybe she liked that he had keys to every mailbox in town. So I didn't confront her. Not right away. Instead, I started watching. Not in a creepy way. I didn't install cameras or follow her car or anything like that. I just paid attention. Something I hadn't done in a long time. I watched the way she tapped her fingers on the countertop when she lied, the way she said, "just tired," the same way a magician says abracadabra before pulling a rabbit out of a shoe. And all the while, I was planning. Now, don't get ahead of me. I didn't plan revenge. That would be too easy. Madison's life was complicated enough without me playing Bond villain. No, I planned a moment. One moment. A scene so dry, so spectacularly mundane, that it would haunt her in the most ordinary way. And that moment came exactly 1 week later, when she asked me to help set up her book club night. She said they were discussing something literary and introspective, which, from the snacks she laid out, chocolate hummus and sparkling water, meant book no one actually finished. She even bought a new little chalkboard sign for the table that said, "Why not?" in pastel cursive. I waited until the second glass of wine was poured and her friend Melanie started talking about character arcs or trauma or whatever people pretend to understand about literature in group settings. Then I walked into the room holding a manila folder. "Ladies," I said with a cheerful nod. "Sorry to interrupt your riveting discussion. Madison, quick question. Do you want the photo back or should I frame it for Derek and add it to our family wall?" Silence. The kind of silence that sucks all the oxygen out of a house. Melanie gasped. Sarah dropped her glass. "And Madison?" She blinked once. Then again. Then laughed. Just a single, dry, sharp laugh. "You opened the envelope," she said. "Of course I did," I replied. "I'm your husband. I open jars, bills, and occasionally, the slow unraveling of our marriage." Then I handed her the folder and walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't run. I just left it open long enough to hear her say, "Wait, Roger." But I didn't wait. Because the one thing Madison forgot, the one thing she didn't count on, was that I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. And that is where the story truly begins. Madison had a system for everything. Schedules, drawers, receipts, emotional availability, color-coded and alphabetized with military precision. If you ever wanted to know where she stood on a topic, you could usually find the answer on a labeled tab in the home office. Finances, birthdays, Roger's dental history, all carefully organized like she was prepping for a surprise quiz on domestic life. So when I discovered the second Polaroid, yeah, there was more than one, it wasn't tucked inside some mystery envelope. That would have been theatrical. No, it was filed under W in her accordion folder labeled miscellaneous, do not touch, right next to warranty cards and weird receipts. I wasn't even snooping this time. I was looking for the manual to our lawnmower because the thing had started smoking like a disgraced actor at a reunion show. And there it was. A new photo, glossy, square, and delightfully unhidden. Madison, mid-laugh, her hand on Derek's chest like she was examining it for termites. His expression suggested this wasn't their first termite inspection. Now, I'll give her this. She had guts. Not only was she filing physical evidence of her side quest in our shared office, she was doing it in alphabetical order. It was almost respectful. If you're going to betray someone, the least you can do is leave a paper trail formatted for easy retrieval. Naturally, I didn't say anything. At this point, I had moved into what I would describe as the quietly observing the collapse of civilization phase of my week. You know the one. It's the emotional state that sets in right after the rage wears off, but before apathy kicks in. A sweet spot where you're too emotionally exhausted to confront, but just alert enough to notice everything. That night, she suggested we play a board game. This was her new thing, scheduled spontaneity. A fun activity meant to distract us from the fact that we hadn't touched each other in 6 months and spoke mostly in passive-aggressive emails about utility bills. "Let's do Clue," she said, pulling it off the shelf like it hadn't been covered in dust since Obama's second term. I stared at her for a moment. "You sure you want to play a game about lies and hidden motives?" She didn't miss a beat. "It's just a game, Roger." So we sat down. She picked Miss Scarlet. Of course she did. I took Colonel Mustard out of principle. 10 minutes in, I was mentally making notes for a new column in the spreadsheet titled Games Madison Prefers When Actively Hiding Something. She was good. Casual, smiling just enough to seem invested, but not enough to raise suspicion. She asked all the right questions, marked her little notebook with exaggerated confidence. I sat there, barely pretending to play, watching her like I was waiting for her to start advertising timeshares. In the middle of the game, she said, "You've been weird lately." I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to ask if it was before or after she made out with the USPS. Instead, I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "It's probably the mustard. He's been through a lot." She looked at me the way you look at a child who's eaten glue. "Are you okay?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? I love board games, especially ones where people pretend to be something they're not." Her face flickered for half a second, just long enough for me to mark it in my mental ledger under recognition of being found out. See also, poker face malfunction. That was the last game we played together. The next day, I took the folder from the office and brought it to my friend Andrew's place. Andrew is the kind of guy who owns 4 different routers for reasons that have never been fully explained. He's also the kind of friend who never asks, "Are you okay?" but always knows when to put on a pot of terrible coffee and pretend his garage is a courtroom. We sat across from each other, the folder between us like it was a cursed relic. "She filed it under W?" he asked, flipping through the contents like he was preparing for a deposition. "Right after the Whirlpool manuals." He shook his head. "I mean, on one hand, she's efficient. On the other, what the hell?" We sat in silence for a while, listening to his neighbor yell at a hedge trimmer like it owed him money. "I think she wants me to find it," I finally said. He looked up. "What makes you say that?" "Because she hasn't changed anything. The routine's the same. The smiles, the morning toast, the little notes about the garbage schedule. It's like she's daring me to say something." Andrew nodded. "Well, if she's waiting for you to explode, maybe don't." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He grinned. "Go full Midwestern. Be so calm it unnerves her." That's when the plan started forming. Not a revenge plan. Not a confrontation. Just data gathering. I wanted to see how far she'd go. How many boxes she'd label. How deep the alphabet would go. So I waited. Again. And wouldn't you know it, she gave me more. A week later, I came home from work to find a stack of index cards on the kitchen table. Labeled. Lined up. Color-coded. Each one had a dinner recipe on it. New ones. Recipes for dishes I had never seen Madison cook. I looked through them. Quinoa bowls, beet hummus wraps, something called zowadal pesto. Things she hated. Things I'd made fun of. I flipped the last card over. In the corner, a tiny heart. And below it, D. She was meal prepping for Derek. In our kitchen. Using our spices. I could have gone nuclear. Instead, I went shopping. The next morning, I bought 10 pounds of red kidney beans, an absurd amount of baking soda, and one of those tiny accordion folders she loved so much. I spent the afternoon labeling every item in the pantry with fake expiration dates and inserting made-up recipes into her stack. Quinoa bark with sardine glaze. Gluten-free pesto cereal. Zowadal pie a la Midwest. She didn't notice. Or pretended not to. At that point, I stopped pretending I didn't know. I started studying her the way you watch a rerun of a show you used to love but now just kind of tolerate. You still laugh at the same lines, but now you know how the season ends. And yet, I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I didn't even sigh dramatically, which I've been told is one of my specialties. Because now I wanted to see how far Madison would take it. If she was willing to live her own life long enough, maybe she'd start forgetting who she was pretending to be. And I'd be right there, in the front row, with a bowl of zowadal pesto popcorn, just watching the show. It started with a municipal parking citation. Most people wouldn't call that a life-altering event, and those people would be right. But when you've been quietly archiving your wife's extracurricular activities in an alphabetized psychological vault for weeks, a parking ticket in her name, shoved under the front door like a passive-aggressive greeting card from the city, can hit with surprising precision. The ticket was issued for a Wednesday. Parallel parking on Maple Street, expired meter, 3:22 p.m. Problem was, Madison had told me she was leading a client strategy session at the university at that exact time, 2 buildings over, with no mention of Maple Street. Unless her strategy session was conducted in a 2009 Prius while feeding quarters to a failing parking meter, something wasn't lining up. Again, I held the ticket up at dinner like I was displaying an exotic bird. Madison barely glanced at it. "Must have been that day I stopped by the post office," she said, chewing on the edge of her thumbnail like she was solving a math problem no one asked her to. I replied. "You park often near that erotic cupcake shop?" That got her attention. She looked up. "What?" "The bakery," I said. "Right next to the meter. It's called Frost Me Gently." I looked it up. "You were parked in front of it. Middle of the afternoon. Peak frosting hours." She blinked. I didn't notice. "Hard to miss," I said, setting the ticket down. "They have glitter signage and a red velvet mascot that dances for tips." She dropped her fork like it had committed a betrayal. "Roger, are you seriously accusing me of, what, lying about a parking ticket now? I'm just impressed you can strategize for clients while also supporting small dessert-themed businesses downtown. That's what I call multitasking." She pushed her chair back. "You've been acting paranoid. It's exhausting. Not half as exhausting as living with someone who forgets where they eat frosting on Wednesdays." She didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at the table like she was doing the math on how fast she could fake a work emergency and retreat upstairs without further questions. I didn't stop her. The truth was, I didn't want a confession. I didn't even want clarity. I wanted to watch her squirm. I wanted her to explain things that didn't need explaining and lie in ways that made my coffee taste better. I had passed the stage of being heartbroken. I was now in that rare emotional zone where clarity meets comedy. That Friday, I came home to a new addition on the fridge, a magnet shaped like an avocado with a smiling face and the word positivity in all caps. I stared at it for 3 full minutes, wondering if this was some kind of subtle commentary on my attitude or just poor taste from a discount bin. I left it there. It felt like something Derek would enjoy. Speaking of Derek, his car had started showing up on our street more often. It was parked 2 houses down, same spot, same angle, like it was assigned by fate. The first time, I let it slide. The second time, I took a walk at 9 p.m. with a pair of binoculars and pretended I was birdwatching. By the 5th time, I was writing his license plate number into a crossword puzzle I never intended to finish. Madison never mentioned it. She'd look out the window, see the car, and pretend she was interested in cloud shapes. I finally broke the silence during a Saturday trip to the garage, which had recently been organized in a way that suggested someone was preparing to move but didn't want to admit it. I noticed Derek's become quite the neighborhood enthusiast, I said, tossing a half-empty jug of windshield washer fluid into a box labeled seasonal wipers. She didn't flinch. What are you talking about? You know, your ex-mailman. The guy who delivers mediocrity now instead of envelopes. Her face twitched. A micro-expression. You had to be watching for it. Derek's not my mailman, she said flatly. True. That would imply he still works for the Postal Service. Which, by the way, he doesn't. Quit last month. Started a drone photography business. Didn't you know? That stopped her. I watched her eyes skim through whatever imaginary calendar she'd kept to track her web of half-truths. But she came up blank. I don't keep tabs on him, she mumbled. No need, I said. He's doing a good job of keeping tabs on us. She turned then, just for a moment, like she might say something real. Maybe explain, maybe defend, maybe crack. But instead, she sighed, grabbed a roll of packing tape, and started sealing up a box labeled office supplies and old notebooks. Got any plans for the weekend? She asked, like we were 2 coworkers trapped in an elevator. Yeah, I said. Thought I'd review my spreadsheet. It's getting long. She paused mid-tape. You have a spreadsheet? I smiled. Oh, it's beautiful. Columns, timestamps, cross-referenced events. There's even a pivot table. Want to see it? Her face paled, which I took as the emotional equivalent of her throwing a shoe at me. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. Sunday afternoon, she asked if she could borrow the car. Her own was making a weird noise, which probably translated to was seen parked outside Derek's place 3 nights ago. Sure, I said, tossing her the keys. Just avoid Maple Street. Meters are tricky. She didn't laugh. She didn't even fake a smile. But her hand trembled slightly as she took the keys, which felt like a small victory. While she was gone, I updated the spreadsheet. Then I printed it. All 16 pages. And I placed it neatly in the kitchen drawer labeled Things We Don't Talk About. Right between her recipe cards and the retirement brochures she requested 6 months ago when we finally make time to plan. When she got back, she didn't say anything. Just walked in, set her bag down, and sat on the couch like she was waiting for a jury verdict. I joined her, remote in hand, flipping through channels. She looked at me. You're really not going to yell? I shrugged. Why waste energy yelling when I can categorize and document in peace? Her voice cracked a little. So what happens now? I looked at her, expression neutral. Not cold. Just done. You keep lying. I keep organizing, I said. Eventually one of us gets tired. She opened her mouth to say something, but I was already scrolling to the Weather Channel, pretending to care about a cold front that would never reach our zip code. And that was it. No explosion. No dramatic declarations. Just Roger. And Madison. And a silence so full of facts, it didn't need words anymore. Madison's new favorite word was space. I just need some space, she'd say, usually while occupying at least 75% of any shared room. The couch? She'd commandeered all the throw pillows into a barricade. The bathroom? Her hair tools had multiplied like bacteria across the counter. Even in bed, she'd stretch out diagonally, claiming strategic dominance like a cartographer dividing up disputed territory. Space, she claimed, was what would help her clear her head. I didn't bother pointing out that her head seemed just fine when she was texting Derek under the table. Which, by the way, she still did, and not very discreetly. She'd tilt the phone like she was shielding nuclear codes, and then pretend she was reading headlines. Apparently, these headlines included a lot of winking emojis and phrases like, LOL, you were so bad. But I wasn't mad anymore. I was inspired. If she needed space, I'd give her space. But it would be the kind of space she wouldn't enjoy. A very curated, well-lit, occasionally humiliating kind of space. I started with the calendar. We had a shared one, color-coded on the fridge. Green for her appointments, blue for mine, yellow for house stuff, and red for fun. A system she invented, which I respected until it turned into a log of how many creative excuses she could come up with for being away from home between 3 and 7 p.m. on weekdays. One Sunday morning, while she was busy researching solo retreats on her tablet in the backyard, I added new events to the calendar. Monday, 5 p.m., Roger's emotional check-in. Expected attendance, 1. Snacks not provided. Wednesday, 6 p.m., group meeting. Roger, the mirror, and harsh realities. Friday, 3:22 p.m., trip to Maple Street to see what all the frosting hype is about. I watched her stare at it later that night, lips twitching slightly. She erased the Maple Street item. I added it back, in bold, with a reminder. Next came the living room. Madison had her little sacred corner, a chair, a lamp, and a stack of unread novels she pretended to rotate but mostly used as aesthetic background during Zoom calls. So I created my own corner, directly across from hers. I moved in my least attractive recliner, a lamp that flickered when you breathed too hard, and an old typewriter I bought off a guy named Ron on Craigslist. What are you doing with that? She asked on day 2, gesturing toward the typewriter as though it might explode. Working on a memoir, I said. Tentative title, Living Adjacent to Madison, A Guide to Surviving Soft Betrayals with Mid-Range Furniture and No Legal Grounds. She didn't laugh. Each night, I'd sit there, clacking away nonsense on the typewriter like a deranged civil servant. I wasn't writing anything real. I just enjoyed the noise. She eventually took her reading lamp and migrated to the guest bedroom, declaring that sound pollution is a real issue. I agreed, cheerfully typing sound pollution in all caps across one entire page and taping it to the fridge. It escalated from there, but not in the way you'd expect. I began replacing small items around the house with slightly different versions. The soap in her bathroom? Swapped with a brand that smelled identical but left a mildly chalky residue. Her shampoo? Replaced with the generic store brand cousin. The batteries in the remote? Replaced with slightly used ones, just weak enough to make her hit the buttons twice. Each change small, each one unacknowledged. But I knew she noticed because she started muttering things like, "Why does everything feel off lately?" My favorite project, though, was the book club. Madison hosted it once a month, which was ironic since she read about 20% of any selected book and spent the rest of the meeting nodding with a practiced expression that said, "Yes, I too have deeply reflected on the themes." Her friends, mainly other mid-level professionals who wore scarves regardless of temperature, would gather, sip wine, and compliment each other on their insights. This time, I offered to set things up. Madison, exhausted from faking sincerity all week, agreed with a dismissive wave. So I prepared. I printed mock book covers and slipped them over the actual book club pics. The titles included Gaslight Your Inner Child, Reclaiming Control Through Passive Aggression, Emotional Contouring, How to Reshape Your Reactions for Maximum Confusion, The Art of Strategic Laundry Folding, Domestic Battles and How to Win Them. I placed them all neatly in the living room, along with tiny name tags I'd made for each guest, including fake quotes attributed to them based on things they'd probably say, like, "I think I understood the ending more than the author did. Rachel, I just feel like the symbolism of the door really reflects modern marriage. Lisa." When the women arrived, I watched from the kitchen, casually wiping down a clean counter as confusion bloomed in slow motion across their faces. Madison didn't notice at first. She was too busy showing someone where the wine was. But the moment she caught sight of the fake titles, she froze. She didn't say anything, just turned slowly and looked at me. I gave her a polite wave. The evening went on, because no one had the courage to ask why their book selections had changed or why there was a whiteboard in the corner that said, "Tonight's theme, how to lose trust and gaslight efficiently." That night, she cornered me in the hallway. "Do you think this is funny?" she asked. "No," I said. "I think it's healing." "You're being petty." "No, Madison. Petty would be changing your laptop's autocorrect to swap Derek with regret." Which, by the way, I haven't done yet. But now that I say it out loud, I'm considering it. She walked away. No slam. No threat. Just quiet retreat. Revenge, as it turns out, doesn't have to be grand or cinematic. It can be quiet, subtle, a curated series of inconvenient truths delivered through sarcasm and minor disruptions. A death by 1,000 paper cuts, except the paper cuts are labeled and filed under M for mutual disappointment. And I didn't stop there. I created a new shared document online, just between us. It was titled Household Project List. She opened it once. Inside were 3 bullet points. Fix squeaky door. Dust ceiling fans. Address emotional chasm growing silently between us while you flirt with Derek like a teenager on a field trip. She never opened it again. And that was enough for me. It started with a list. Not mine this time, hers. Madison, in her usual font size 11, Times New Roman. No bullet points because she hated the visual noise, had left it sitting out on the desk next to her tax folders and an unopened pamphlet titled Retirement Planning. It's closer than you think. The irony was not lost on me. The list was titled Clarity Things, which I assumed was a clever rebranding of things I don't want to explain but still want to control. There were 13 items. I read all of them while pretending to clean the screen of my monitor with a napkin from a gas station I didn't even remember going to. Item 4 was renegotiate the lawnmower arrangement. I wasn't aware there was a lawnmower arrangement, let alone one that needed diplomatic reevaluation. Item 7 simply said window guy, which was either a contractor or a new nickname for Derek. The crown jewel was item 11, talk to Roger. Eventually I've been doing a lot of heavy lifting lately. Eventually we'd go through the junk drawer. Eventually we'd fix the closet door that always swung open like it was trying to make a point. Eventually she'd acknowledge I wasn't just some background extra in her personal drama series. That night, I circled item 11 and left the list in the fridge. She brought it out like I'd insulted her ancestors. You're treating my personal process like a joke, she said, holding the paper like it was covered in acid. No, I replied. I'm treating it like a delayed conversation dressed up as organization. She crossed her arms. I've been trying to give us space. Space isn't a conversation, Madison. It's a Wi-Fi dead zone. Her eyes narrowed. I could see the mental engine start stalling. She didn't have a pre-written line for this one. She sat down on the edge of the couch, not the middle, too much commitment. Fine, she said. Let's talk. No candles. No dramatic background music. Just a Tuesday night, a half-dead floor lamp, and a conversation 2 months too late. I sat across from her and tried to remember the last time we'd had a real conversation. One without filtering, dodging, or something being not a good time. It might have been last Thanksgiving. Maybe the year before. Either way, it didn't matter now. I want to talk about the ending, I said. She blinked. Ending? Yes. Of the show we've been running. The one where we pretend everything's fine because we don't want to cancel the subscription. That's dramatic. So it's cheating with a guy who refers to his biceps as the twins, but here we are. Her mouth opened, then shut again. I could tell she was deciding whether to defend or deflect. She chose deflect, but dressed it in a fake epiphany. You haven't exactly been present either. Madison, I was so present I created a spreadsheet to track your emotional absences. She winced. I wasn't sure if it was the line or the realization that I probably wasn't joking. I don't know how to fix this, she said finally. I do, I said. We stop pretending it's broken in a way that can be fixed. Silence. Then more silence. Then even more. Enough to make you want to say something just to prove the room wasn't stuck on mute. I never meant for it to be this way, she muttered. You mean you never meant to get caught organizing your affair with the same attention to detail you use for our utility bills? Don't be cruel. I'm not. I'm being clinical. You like that? She sighed and leaned back. So what are you saying? You want a divorce. I want a full refund, but I'll settle for a clean break and my half of the vintage Tupperware. Roger. No, really. Keep the ceramic mugs and the salad spinner. I'll take the records, the recliner, and the ability to sleep without wondering why you've muted all your notifications after 9 p.m. Her face didn't change much. That was Madison's gift. Emotional minimalism. She could be furious and look like she'd just misplaced a coaster. I didn't plan for any of this, she said. Madison, you made a Google Doc for who waters the ficus. I think we both know you planned. She finally cracked a smile, just barely. It was a moment I might have treasured a year ago. Now it felt like a gesture made out of habit. So what now? She asked. We divide things, I said. You can make a spreadsheet for it if that makes you feel better. And you? She asked. I'm going to print a banner. What kind of banner? One that says Roger survived the Madison experience in Comic Sans. Hang it in the garage next to the tools you never used. She smiled again. This one wasn't forced, but it didn't reach her eyes. We talked for another half hour, mostly logistics. She offered to move out first. I agreed. We both knew she'd already packed most of her stuff, probably labeled the boxes by room and mood. Before she left the room, she turned at the door and looked back. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked. I shrugged. "Eventually." She nodded. Then left to draft another list, I assume. And just like that, the show was canceled. The credits rolled in silence. 2 weeks after Madison moved out, the house got louder. Not because of noise, but because of the absence of her coordinated silence. The house used to hum like an appliance showroom. Background podcasts, keyboard clacks, drawer closings with unreasonable care. Now, I could actually hear my own phone vibrate. It was unsettling, but not unpleasant. Like hearing your own name in a waiting room you forgot you signed into. She left the place surgically clean. Not warm, not hostile. Just disinfected. Like she didn't want the space to remember her. I opened the cabinets and half expected to find little exit interviews from the dishes. The salad spinner was gone, as promised. The coffee grinder, too, which was a bold move considering she only used it once a month but had insisted it, brought a European spirit to the kitchen. The divorce paperwork was straightforward. Unemotional. No handwritten notes, no. I hope we both find peace. Just standard language about property division and mutual dissolution of everything that used to matter. I signed it while watching a YouTube video about sink installation. Seemed appropriate. One faucet ends, another begins. People started asking questions, which was their polite way of saying, "Give us the drama, Roger." My coworker Amy gave me the same look you give someone who shows up to work without a lunchbox and says they're doing intermittent fasting. "You okay?" she asked, which really meant, "Can you please entertain me with whatever your ex did?" I told her I was fine, that I'd taken up power walking, that I was thinking about repainting the garage. Both lies. I had no intention of walking fast or changing paint, but I enjoyed the way those lies made people nod solemnly and say things like, "That's healthy." Madison didn't call. Not even to ask about her missing notebook labeled home maintenance/personal dreams, which I had actually found tucked behind the dryer. It was full of half-started plans: install shelves, try online classes, learn to garden. There was even a page titled New Chapter, with nothing under it. Just a blank space, as if she'd intended to write a new version of herself, and then got distracted by a limited-time sale on throw pillows. I didn't call her either. Not because I wanted to seem strong or mysterious. I just didn't have anything to say that hadn't already been filed, labeled, and gently mocked under my breath for 3 months straight. Then one day, Derek showed up. Not metaphorically. He literally parked outside my house, got out of his car, and walked up the driveway like he was borrowing sugar and not the former wife of the guy he was about to talk to. He had on sunglasses and a jacket he probably thought made him look important. It made him look like someone who calls himself an entrepreneur but spends most of his time editing videos of fireworks on a drone. "Roger," he said, trying for confident. "Derek," I replied, not even trying. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "That's good, because I'm fresh out of lawn chairs." He paused, clearly unsure whether that was a threat, a metaphor, or just a logistical update. I didn't help him. I just came to say I didn't expect all of this. All of what? Her moving in with you? Or the fact that my Wi-Fi's been faster since she left? He blinked. "No. I mean, everything." I waited. He scratched the back of his neck. "She's not happy." There it was. The line. The one that comes too late and still lands with less impact than intended. Like a balloon that makes it to the party after the guests have left and the cake is stale. I didn't react. I let him continue. He seemed like he needed it. "She talks about you," he added. "A lot. Like, the little things. Your spreadsheets. Your dumb jokes. How you organize the junk drawer by urgency of purpose." I nodded. "Ah, yes. Category 3. Things you keep for reasons you're no longer proud of." He gave a weak smile. "Yeah, that one." Then, as if he'd been rehearsing, he said, "I don't think she knew what she was doing." "Oh, she knew," I said. "She just didn't think she'd get bored so fast." He opened his mouth to argue. I stopped him with a look. "Let me make this easy," I said. "I don't hate her. I don't hate you. I don't sit around crafting effigies out of dryer lint and muttering your names. But I'm not here to make either of you feel better." He nodded slowly. "She asked me to tell you she's sorry." "Tell her thanks," I said. "And to label her apology properly. Maybe put it under missed deadlines." He stood there a moment longer, like he expected something else. An olive branch, a punchline, maybe a hug. Instead, I pointed toward his car. He left without saying goodbye. That night, I did the one thing I hadn't done in months. I opened my own spreadsheet, not the one about Madison, the other one. The one I'd started before she moved out. It was titled What Next? There were only 3 items on it. Get through the week without correcting someone's grammar out loud. Go back to that bookstore you liked before it became a wine bar. Figure out what you want without consulting anyone else's calendar. I added a 4th. Buy a new salad spinner. But a bad one. Just for the symbolism. The next morning, I opened the windows, not for air, but just because I could. There was nothing poetic about it. No big moment of rebirth. Just a middle-aged guy standing in a half-empty kitchen, realizing the silence finally belonged to him. That was enough. Subscribe to the channel